Hello again, economics students. So, I've alluded to the fact that in Australia and many parts of the world, to varying degrees, we use this thing called the market. And we said that it's going to, or I kind of mentioned that it maximizes efficiency, and economists think that it's the best way to allocate resources. So, we're looking at the conditions for a free and perfectly competitive market in this video, as the dot point here states. And now that you know each type of efficiency, you know that we really can't achieve them all at once. But definitely the market is good at achieving a few of them, and you may already start to be thinking about which ones they are, but not so good at achieving one of them in particular. Okay, so firstly, economists love markets. They really do. And that's because they can do something that human beings cannot. Even though they've tried throughout history, and markets can do something that human beings cannot. And what they can do is they can organize the allocation of resources. And they can do that in the most efficient manner. Okay, it's not perfect, and it does fail in lots of instances, which we'll come back to. And I certainly stand to be corrected on this, but as far as I see all the evidence, they're the best way to allocate resources. Now, okay, what are markets? So a market is just anywhere buyers and sellers meet, and they don't have to meet physically, to transact or to make mutually beneficial exchanges. Okay, some kind of transaction. That could be resources, that could be goods and services. And so actually we have product markets where we sell goods and services, and we have resource markets where we sell resources. Wow. So buying a pie from 7-Eleven, paying your school fees, getting a job are all market transactions. All right. And of course, getting a job would be in the resource market. So markets are broken down into two sides. And on the one side, we have the buyers or demand, the demand side it's often called. On the other side, we have the sellers or the supply side. And you're going to use this framework again and again throughout the study of economics. So you've got to get accustomed to thinking about things from the demand side or from the supply side. Okay, so on the demand side, we analyze how consumers are behaving, how you as a consumer are behaving, and how I or anyone else goes about satisfying their needs and wants. And on the supply side, it's where we look at the firms, suppliers or sellers or businesses. All those words are interchangeable. They all mean the same thing, where suppliers seek to maximize their profits. Okay, and in a market, they have to do that by combining resources and producing what we want. How amazing is that? So we'll talk about a little bit more on that later. So in year 12, you really need to only understand one type of market. And that's the one that we're talking about now, which is the perfectly competitive market. Of course, there's heaps of other markets, but for now, you can just focus in on perfectly competitive markets. So what are the conditions for a free and perfectly competitive market? Free just means to have no government intervention in the market at all. Now, of course, all these things exist on a bit of a scale. So there's no market that is, as far as I'm aware, there's few, if any, markets that have no government intervention. But we're thinking about this theoretically. Free means to have no taxes, no regulation, no subsidies, etc. Okay. The second thing is that there needs to be many buyers and sellers. And this is actually really important because it creates competition. Economists also love competition. They love markets, they love competition, because competition is the major driver of efficiency. If a business doesn't have competition, then it can get lazy and it doesn't really have any incentive to do the right thing or to improve or to maximize productivity. So we want competition. We love competition. Thirdly, there has to be no barriers to entry for suppliers. Okay. So what we're saying here is that barriers could be financial barriers or could be like regulatory barriers, like laws that stop firms from entering a particular market. So, for example, it's very, very hard to set up a bank in Australia. You and me couldn't get together and set up a bank if we wanted to set up a bank. And that's for good reason, because you and I probably shouldn't set up a bank. But we don't want to make it too hard. We don't want to discourage new entrants into the banking sector, right? We do want competition in the banking sector. It drives down prices. It means it's better for you and me. So we want to have, in a perfectly competitive market, no barriers. So the other thing we could say about that is that will help firms move their resources in and out of different markets as we change our needs and wants. Okay, so we'd say it'd be dynamically efficient because you can go from banking to some other business quickly. All right, over here on the next slide, we have the symmetry of information. So we're still going through the characteristics or the conditions for a perfectly competitive market. So we want information, we want there to be a balance of information between the buyer and the seller. Okay, so symmetry just means balance. That's important because if you don't know that your secondhand car that you're about to buy is, the engine's about to blow up, that's terrible. You're going to buy something that you don't really want or need, and this is a bad situation. So we don't want that. We want you to know what you're getting yourself into. Second along here is that the products are homogeneous. Now, homogeneous is it's actually a Greek word, I just looked it up, but it basically means the same, okay? Economists love using fancy words. They love competition, they love markets, and they love using fancy words. But it just means there's no difference between Nike and Adidas. There's no differentiation. Of course, in the real world there is, but we're assuming in a perfectly competitive market, all the shoes are the same. Finally, we're going to say that consumers have sovereignty. Another fancy word. Sovereignty just means the ultimate power. Okay. And in this case, it's the ultimate power to decide where resources are allocated, which is kind of where we started this discussion. Okay. So because of all these characteristics that I've just discussed, ultimately consumers will decide where resources go, because if a business produces something we don't want, then they won't be a business. Okay. All right, so we've been through that dot point. I Googled something else. It's called the comments section. That's where you put your questions, not the chat box. I'm showing my age here. So if you have any questions, chuck them in the comments section. Bye for now.